If you're watching this video, you or a loved one have probably experienced the loss of a baby. I want you to know that you are not alone. Whether you carried your baby for 3 days or 3 months, your pain is valid. Hello everyone, my name is Dallas and welcome back to the Doane home. Welcome back to the Doane home. If you're new here, my name is Dallas and this is a channel where I post motherhood and lifestyle videos. Today I'm going to be talking about miscarriage and my experience with miscarriage. This may be a heavy topic for some people, as I'm going to be sharing my experience in depth with losing my first baby. If you're currently watching this video because you've experienced the loss of your baby, I want to tell you that I feel for you and I was in your exact same position a year ago. This video is still a pretty heavy topic for me, so if I don't seem like my normal cheery self, it's because I'm trying to not cry. Before I share my experience with you, I just want to let you know that if you have experienced a miscarriage, it is not your fault. Before I experienced mine, it almost felt like it was kind of a taboo subject, but I was actually pretty surprised to find out that miscarriage is fairly common. Around 1 in 4 recognized pregnancies end in a miscarriage, about 85% of those being in the first trimester. Usually a miscarriage will occur due to a chromosomal abnormality. It's caused completely by chance, and there's no way that we can control it, which was one of the hardest things for me to come to terms with because I'm self-admittedly a control freak. On September 15th of 2019, I took a pregnancy test and got a positive result. I was super excited. I ran into the room with the pregnancy test to show my husband, and we were already planning our registry at that point. We weren't necessarily trying for a baby, but I knew that at some point I wanted to have one. A couple of days later, I went down to my local clinic and got the confirmation that I was in fact pregnant. I found out that I was about 7 weeks along at this point. I was super excited and went ahead and posted on Facebook to let all my friends and family know that we were expecting. The evening of September 20th of 2019, we experienced the loss of our baby. I remember that day like it was yesterday, and I want to share with you the events that happened leading up to the miscarriage. The day was a pretty typical day for me. I got to work at 9 o'clock and left at 5. At the time, I was managing a cell phone store, and my reps depended on me a lot to help them close deals and get things done. On this particular day, we were a little bit short-staffed. There were only 2 sales reps in the store, and they were both pretty busy. One of my reps was really close to closing a deal, and the only thing he needed was a phone that we didn't have in stock, but the other store across town did have in stock. It was a pretty common occurrence for me to have to go across town to the other store to pick up a phone. Nothing out of the ordinary. On a normal day, it would typically be about a 15-minute drive to and from my store to their store to get a phone and bring it back. On this particular day, there was a pretty nasty wreck, and it took about an hour to get from their store back to my store to get the deal closed up and finished. I'm not gonna lie, it was a little bit stressful. The customers were getting impatient, and my sales rep was getting stressed out, and I was just trying so hard to get there as fast as I could to make sure that he could get this deal closed up. I finally got him the phone, and at this point it was about 6:30 p.m. I stayed after my shift about an hour and a half, but again, this was a pretty common occurrence. Being in management, it's just something that would happen every so often. As I was driving back home, that's when I started to feel some light cramping. I wasn't super concerned. I just figured that I was probably hungry after that stressful ordeal. When I got home, the cramping didn't stop, and that's when I noticed a little bit of spotting as well. It took about 2 hours for my cramping to go from light to a pretty heavy cramp. It felt like a really bad menstrual cramp. And at that point, the amount of bleeding that I was experiencing was increasing as the time passed as well. So of course I was freaking out. My husband was aware, and he told me to go ahead and call the hospital and talk with the nurse on call to tell him my symptoms to see if I needed to come in. The nurse on call told me that if I noticed any tissue being passed with the blood, to go ahead and come into the emergency room to get checked out. About 30 minutes after the call, that's when I noticed tissue being passed in the blood, so we jumped in the car, drove over to the emergency room, which was only about a 2-minute drive from us. At this point, I had been crying my eyes out for the last 2 hours, not only because it was extremely painful, but because I knew it was happening but didn't want it to be happening. When we got to the emergency room, they got me all checked in. I didn't know that Stefan could come back with me to the emergency room area, so we were separated for about an hour. They took me back to a bed, they had me change into a gown, and then they drew some blood so that they could check my HCG levels. It was going to take about an hour for the blood work to come back, So during that time, they did an ultrasound and a transvaginal ultrasound. I can remember following the ultrasound tech back to the room. She gave me a couple of minutes to get situated so I could take off my underwear and all those things. And I just remember seeing the amount of blood that was there and just immediately started crying again. It was really hard to get up on the bed and have her spread the jelly on my stomach and look up at the monitor as she's checking to see if baby's still in there and just seeing nothing. She was listening around and trying to find a heartbeat, and there was some sound coming from the monitor, and she let me know that that wasn't a heartbeat, it was just a sound of my uterus. After she did the regular ultrasound, that's when she did the transvaginal ultrasound, and it was pretty much just the same exact scenario. At this point, she took me back to my bed and we were just waiting on my blood work results. I did ask if I could have my husband come back, and they said, yeah, he could have been back here the whole time. So I was relieved when I could finally have him back there with me. About 15 minutes later, the doctor came in and let me know the results from the ultrasound, which there was nothing found on the ultrasound, and the blood work came back with trace amounts of HCG, so the pregnancy was aborted. He explained to me that I had experienced a chemical pregnancy, which honestly at that point, everything he was saying was going in one ear, out the other, and I was just a complete wreck. He did recommend that I make a follow-up appointment with one of the pregnancy clinics in town, just to make sure that everything had come out correctly. But at this point in time, I didn't have health insurance, so I didn't end up doing that. If you do have health insurance, I do strongly recommend getting that done, just because there is a chance that all the tissue hasn't come out and you could go septic and experience further complications. So once we got the results and we found out that we had lost the baby, it was about 11:30 at night, midnight, so we went back home. And I remember just laying in bed and bawling my eyes out. I don't even remember falling asleep that night. I just kind of laid there and then woke up the next morning. It was one of the most painful experiences I've had to deal with in my life. I spent the next couple of days laying in bed feeling completely numb, really heavy. It's a strange feeling to describe, but I felt empty. The weeks after the miscarriage were pretty hard because, again, it's not something that just happened overnight. I experienced bleeding for about 2 weeks after my miscarriage happened. After you lose your baby, there are a whole lot of emotions that are going through your mind. For me, I was extremely sad, extremely depressed. It was a struggle to get out of bed most days because, again, I just felt so empty. It kind of felt like someone ripped a chunk out of my stomach and I just couldn't move at all. At the time, I also felt extremely guilty. I probably spent a good couple of days trying to retrace my last week before my miscarriage to figure out what I did to cause it to happen. I also felt betrayal, which might sound strange, but I just felt betrayed by my own body. Again, it's hard to explain, but it just felt like the one thing that my body was supposed to do, it couldn't do and didn't do properly, and it was just extremely frustrating and super saddening. Another feeling that I felt after going through the miscarriage was jealousy. By jealousy, I mean anytime I saw someone in a grocery store or heard about someone being pregnant, I of course was happy for them, but I was just so jealous at the fact that their body was able to take this baby and nurture it and care for it, and mine wasn't. Again, experiencing a miscarriage is not only very physical, but very emotional as well. At least for me, you never really completely heal from the pain of losing your baby, especially if this was being my first baby, but you do learn to cope with the pain. Everyone copes with the loss of their baby differently. For me, I really fell into writing. I actually wrote a song and posted it on my second YouTube channel, which I'll link that song down below if any of you are curious. Again, it was one of the hardest things I've ever had to experience, but luckily I did have a wonderful support system of my husband, my friends, my family, my coworkers and my management team at my own job, and just a lot of wonderful people in my life to help me get through it. I wanted to share my experience and make this video again to let you know that you are not alone and it is not your fault. It is okay to feel sad and depressed and all of those emotions that you're feeling, and you can take as much time as you need to grieve. After I experienced my miscarriage, I probably spent a good month every single day on YouTube watching every single video that I could about miscarriage. It did help me out a lot because it let me know that I was not alone and there were lots of other mamas going through the same exact thing as me. You are extremely strong, and I know it's so hard, but you will get through this storm. It's been a little over a year now, and thinking back on it, it still is very painful. However, we are excited and very thankful that we have our rainbow baby on the way, and he could be here any minute now. If you've made it this far, I want to thank you so much for listening to my story and sharing the experience with me. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give us a like, comment what you'd like to see next, and of course, subscribe. We'd love to bring you along on our journey. And from the Doane home to your home, we hope you have a lovely day. Bye, thanks for watching.